Let's continue from where we stopped last time. That is to say, hedging with financial futures. But before we go to hedging with financial futures, we want to look at some salient points on position that we established last class. One of the salient points is one, any loss on the position that is being hedged will be matched by a gain on the future position. However, any gain on the position that is being hedged will be matched by a loss on the future position. So the useful rule that we need to remember is as follows. One, a long position in futures will gain from an increase in the future price and lose for a fall in the price. Number two, a short position in the futures will gain from a fall in the future price and lose from a rise in the price, ceteris paribus. Now, let's understand that the statement date for futures must be later than the date of the transaction that is being hedged. That is, the transaction date, the transaction that we are hedging, the settlement date will be later. That is, the transaction date will be that we are hedging will be earlier than the settlement date. That's what we are saying. If a company is hedging a position in interest rate for the euro and intends to close the position in August, it should open a position in September futures. If it opens a position in June futures, the future will reach settlement in June, and the position will no longer be hedged. The position will no longer be hedged. Let's look at this example. A US company expects to receive 2 million euro from a customer in April. In 4 months' time, and he wishes to hedge the exposition with currency futures. On receipt of euro in April, the company will exchange them in US dollars. Assuming that the company is exposed to a fall in the value of euro, full stop. Now, let's also assume that each US dollar stroke euro currency future is for 125,000 euro. Now, this is what the company will do, the US company. The US company will want to sell euro in exchange for US dollars. Therefore, it will sell June future to hedge its position, which is April. Its transaction position, which is April. It will sell a June future, which is a later date than its transaction position. It will sell 16 contracts, which is 2 million divided by 125,000. That's 2 million euro divided by 125,000 per contract. That is 16 contracts. Now, if the euro falls in value against the US dollars, the value of 2 million euro receivable will fall. However, the price of the future will also fall. And since the company has a short position in the future, it will gain from the fall in price. The gain on the future position will offset the fall in the value of the dollars. So all these things is for us to be able to hedge a future position. To hedge a future position. So many times we want to assume a perfect situation, but there is no perfect situation. There's no perfect hedging. So what it means is that there is imperfect hedging. What do we mean by imperfect hedging or imperfect hedges? Futures are contracts for a standard quantity of underlying items, whereas the position of which the hedge is required might not be an exact multiple of the value of a future contract. Now we will understand it better when we look at this example. A French company $2 million US dollar in July. It wants to hedge its with currency futures. Exchange the dollar income in July for euro, and so we'll be selling Like, what will this company do? It will exchange in July for euro, and so it will sell dollar and buy euro, so a fall in the value of the dollars. Now let's assume that a future contract is for 125,000 euro. To create a hedge with future by purchasing September future, we will need to calculate the equivalent value of $1.2 million in euro. Suppose the company can buy September future at 1.2350 in bracket, that is 1.2350 per 1 euro. Now, if you look at what I'm saying, 1.2 million US dollar divided by 1.2350 of a dollar to 1 euro. That will give us 971,660 euro, just like I have it on the board. Therefore, what it means is that 971,660 euro is equivalent to 7.8 contracts. If we still assume that our future contract in euro is 125,000 euro, like we've been assuming all this while. So we will understand that the company cannot buy a fraction of a future. So what it means is that it must buy 7 or 8 contracts. It cannot buy a fraction, 0.8 of a future. So it must buy either 7 contracts or 8 contracts. If it buys 7 contracts, what it means is that it will be hedging 875,000. That's 7 times 125,000 euro. We will be hedging 875,000 out of 971,660. But if it buys 8 contracts, it will be hedging 1 million euro. 1 million euro. In both cases, the hedge is imperfect. So it means, whichever way you look at it, the hedging is imperfect. That's what brings us to imperfect hedges. So in this case, what happens is that the company will probably buy 8 contracts instead of 7, because 7.8 is closer to 8 than 7. So having bought futures to create a long position, the company will gain from a rise in future price, which means a weaker dollar. And this will be offset by the fall in value of future dollar income of $1.2 million. If you have any question so far, you can send it to my WhatsApp. I will explain better. Now, creating a hedge with financial future, which is the main topic. All I did was just to, wrap up our hedges with futures when we are looking at commodities futures. What do we mean by creating an hedge with financial future, or what do we mean by financial futures? To hedge with financial futures, we look at the exposure of our currency to risk, our interest rate or market for share prices. So when we are looking at financial futures, we are looking at currency risk, interest rate risk, or market risk for share prices. All these financial futures are short-termly exposed to short-term risk only. However, note that all future tradings are in contracts with settlement date within the next 12 days or 12 months, within the next 12 months. So let's continue with our imperfect hedges. Under our financial risks. Hedging with future is also imperfect because of basis and basis risk. In the last class, we treated basis and basis risk. When a hedge is created with future, the current spot price will differ from the futures price by the basis. Oftentimes, since basis falls towards zero, changes in the future prices will be larger than changes in the current spot market price. This means that the edge created by the future position will not provide a gain or loss that matches exactly the loss or gain on the transaction or position that is being hedged. You will understand this better when we look at hedging with currency futures. And that is what we want to try and summarize here. Currency futures. These are contracts for the purchase or sale of a standard quantity of one currency in exchange for a secondary currency. Future contracts are priced at the exchange rate for the transaction. Most currency futures are contracts for the major international currency. For example, US Euro currency. Many a times when you have questions on currency futures in the examination hall, you will be told the size of each future contract. This will assist you to carry out your solution. What you need to understand is that hedging currency exposure with futures has many principles, many of which we have looked at in class, and many of it I have sent to you. So you need to carefully look at it. When I look at some other principles like perfect hedging, with no basic risks. If you are looking at your pack, you will be looking at 29.4.2, 29.4.2, and we are looking at the second example. Perfect hedge, no basis risk. So let's look at the first example. Perfect hedge with no basis risk. I read. It is July. A US company must pay 750,000 euro to a Spanish supplier in November and wishes to hedge its currency exposure with currency futures. In this example, it is assumed that there is no basis and the future price and the current spot market exchange rate are always equal. That's the meaning of there is no basis. We've done this before. The price of December future in July is 1.2100 to €1. And the value of a tick is $12.5. We have calculated it previously, but if you look at your pack, you will see that it is also stated there. That is $12.25 to $1. That's a tick. Now, what are we exposed to? We are exposed to the rise in the value or cost of euro between July and November. So what it means is that the company will pay euros in November. So to create a future hedge against the risk of a rise in the cost of the euro, it should buy currency futures. If the cost of the euro goes up, the company will have to pay more to obtain the 750,000 euro. But this higher cost will be offset by a gain on the future position. This logic can be set out in three-step approach described previously, now, and as follows. Why I said previously, now, and as follows is because we have looked at such situation previously. We are also looking at it now. We are also looking at it now. We are also looking at it now, and we are looking at it as follows. Step one. Identify the underlying transaction that you are trying to hedge. That is the first step. And what are you hedging? The US company will be paying €750,000 in the future, in November. Step 2, what is the currency risk in the underlying transaction? The cost of obtaining the euro will go up. That is, the cost value of the euro will rise against the dollar. Step 3, work out a future position that creates a profit if there is a loss on the underlying transaction. What we are saying is that if a loss will be incurred on the underlying transaction, if the value of euro goes up, the future pay position should create a profit. If the value of the euro goes up, it should create a profit. So buy euro currency futures, since a profit will be made if the value of euro goes up, and the future can be sold at a higher price. So what we are saying in essence is that the company, the US company, will buy a 6 December contract and this 6 December contract will be bought at 1.2100. Now, what I'm saying is that to buy December contract, that is 6 contracts. To buy 6 contracts for December contract, to use it to hedge the November contract. That 6 is obtained by 750,000 divided by 125,000 euro. So that means we buy 6, just as I have it on the board. Number of contracts is 750,000, which is expected to pay in November. The US company is expected to pay 750 euro in November. So he wants to hedge it. What he will do is we buy a December contract, and at 1.2100, like I said before. So he will eventually buy 6 contracts. That 6 contracts is what is going to buy. But let's suppose that the spot exchange rate in November, when the US company must make the payment in euro, is 1.2240. Let's assume that it is 1.2240. If that is the case, what it means is the cost of buying euro has gone up. And that is what he wants to hedge against. So the long future position is closed by selling that 6 contracts for December at 1.2240, which is also the future price as at his position. So what he will do is to close the position, to close the what's it called, the contract earlier, before November, and make a gain. That future, December future that is buying, he will close it earlier to make a gain. And that will be open future position, buy the future at 1.2100, close the position, sell at 1.2240. It will make a gain of 0.01406. And the total gain will now be 6 contracts multiplied by 140 ticks, multiplied by 12.50 per tick, and that will give 10,500 euro. So what we are saying is that if you have sold in the future, if you have opened, if you have bought in futures and close the position by selling in the futures, you will end up making a gain of 10,500 euro. How will that 10,500 euro assisting to hedge is November payment of 750? That will be calculated thus, because the spot rate as of November is now 1.2240. 1.2240. You will eventually be buying at 750,000 at 1.224 to pay back, to pay that 750. And that will be what? 750 times 1.224 will give me he now wants to pay in November. He will be paying we'll be paying €750 at 1.224. And that will give me 918. That will give me 918,000. Then is gain less is gain at hedging. That is gain is 10,500. So the seven equivalent payment of 750 is 907 euro. 907 euro. That's the equivalent of the 750 that he will be paying. So if that is the case, what will he have gained? Does he really knock off the, is there no basic tricks? Yes, there's no basic tricks, because 907 divided by 500 divided by 750 euro will give us 1. Because this is what we will be paying in dollars. They give us 1.2100 to a dollar, dollar to a euro, to 1 euro. $1.210, and that is the spot rate. That's the spot rate during the transaction. You will see that there will not be any gain, there will not be any loss. It would have perfectly hedged. It would have perfectly hedged the transaction using futures. It would have perfectly hedged the transaction using futures. So definitely the time when we open this feature, when we open the feature, you will see that the spot rate is 1.2100 to $2,100 to 1 euro, to 1 euro. So you would have perfectly hedged it, and there will not be basis, because like we said, the basis tend to zero as the time get closer to the settlement date. It tends to zero at the time the settlement gets to. But in practice, I will state it again, in practice, we have to be very careful. There is no perfect edges. No perfect edges. No perfect edges. Though it also depends on the future rise or fall. Future rises or fall. Depends on future rises or fall. If you have questions that can show you such this thing, we'll look at it subsequently. Now, you need to understand that these financial futures, this example that I have shown you, goes for interest rates. We have looked at the currency futures. It goes for interest rate futures because they are all short-term exposure to risks. I told you we have, for financial futures, we have interest rate futures. We also have currency futures. The third one that I told you is or market risks for share prices. They are looked at and they are just the same way of the example that I have showed you. The same way of the example that I have shown you. If you have any question, you can, ask me later on WhatsApp.